Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Juvenal Caporale. My pronouns are he, him, his. I am an assistant professor of ethnic studies that focuses on Chicanx and Latinx studies. It is an honor and privilege to welcome you to our second annual Healing Masculinities Through Collective Voices community event. This year's sub-theme is Transformative Justice. Before proceeding, I would like to invite Katiel from my community organizing and activism course to please read Stan State's land acknowledgement.
Salamat and mabuhay. We would like to formally and with great respect acknowledge that we are on traditional lands of the Yukats Nation. Our campus, Stanislaus State, is built on the unceded ancestral lands of these indigenous peoples. Thank you for letting us honor them and give our thanks to their ancestors and descendants for their constant and careful stewardship of this land.
Thank you, Katiel. The structure of this event is as follows. First, we're going to have a panel, followed by breakout rooms, where you will then get to ask more detailed questions to our panelists. And finally, we will have a share back, sharing the things we've learned when we were in our breakout rooms. This community event is sponsored by the Ethnic Studies Department and the Male Student Success Initiative MSI program at Stan State. This collaborative effort not only falls within the transformative justice aspirations of ethnic studies and MSI, but also those of Project 1300, which aims to increase the number of young men of color who attend and graduate college in California's northern Central Valley region. Adhering to the Compadre Extended Kinship Network tradition that was established by the National Compadres Network, NCN, and extended by the San Diego community-based organization Iscali, 5 men, including myself, created a Círculo de Hombres, or healing circle at Stan State to improve the educational outcomes of underrepresented students. The purpose of the Círculo de Hombres at Stan State is to offer a space of dialogue and support for self-identified men within an academic space. Consistent with scholarship on the intergenerational healing of young men of color, this brave, safe, and inclusive space was created so that we could comfortably share our gifts, baggage, cargas, challenges, and well-being. Humanhood, respect, and unity continue to be our objectives. Given young men of color continue to face systemic issues that dehumanize them, liberatory approaches are necessary to rehumanize them. Not only is transformative justice a principle of a 4-part transformative movement of La Cultura Cura, or Culture Cures chart, utilized by the National Compadres Network and its partners, but also it is synonymous with the indigenous Maya Nahua concept of In Lakesh, tú eres mi otro yo, you are my other me. While fairness and collective responsibility are attributes of transformative justice, at the heart of this model is this idea of relational interconnectedness, in Tloque Nahuaque. According to Noshela, restorative justice stresses that the system is flawed, overworked, and retributive, but does not address why it exists, how it is racist, sexist, ableist, and classist, whom it benefits, and how it was developed. Transformative justice, on the other hand, is explicitly opposed to helping someone get arrested, imprisoned, fired from their job, repressed or oppressed. It is about looking for the good within others, while also being aware of complex systems of domination. If the world is to transform, we need everyone to transform and everyone to be voluntarily involved in critical dialogue together. As healing circles are hinged on dialogue, they offer self-reflection, support, and critical consciousness possibilities to enact personal and or collective social-political changes. Thus, people who participate in healing circles can learn to see themselves as sacred human beings who are interconnected to the world around them and possess the power to transform themselves and their communities. Today, the Ethnic Studies Department and MSI at Stan State bring you a ceremony to our campus and a panel of experts who make it their life work to help restore the well-being of our communities. These scholars, educators, practitioners, and I want to add brothers, represent the disciplines of Chicanx, Latinx, ethnic and indigenous studies, Black studies, psychology, Asian American, and global international studies. Collectively, some of their works address the issues of indigeneity, colorism, police brutality, mass incarceration, therapy and counseling, art, community activism, and racial healing. Indeed, these individuals are a living testament that men of color can heal and rehumanize themselves through transformative justice practices and healing circles. Now, I would like to invite the interim chair of the Ethnic Studies Department to say a few words about our community event. Dr. Rolf, please take the floor.
Thank you, Dr. Caporale. Welcome, everyone. Bienvenidos a todos. This is the second annual Healing Masculinities event, and it is definitely living up to this year's theme of transformative justice, especially at the time when there is truly a reactivation and a regalvanizing of the collective power of the people to unapologetically rise up and insist upon the long-standing rallying cry that we are human and that we demand that all institutions and all practices on Turtle Island reflect the full humanity of everyone. And in the signs during the sanitation workers' strike in Memphis, Tennessee, in don't let me get it wrong, but April 4th, 1965, that Martin Luther King took part in, and that would be his last, collective organizing event, where the signs in all bold letters and all caps said, "I am a man." And the needs and the critical importance of healing masculinities and of always coming from that place within, individually and collectively, as we can see modeled by Tennessee state legislators Justin Pearson and Justin Jones of the Tennessee Three, as we are reminded once again from the brutal shooting of teenager Ralph Yarl, who was simply ringing a doorbell to look for his siblings, that regardless of how the outside world views us, we always come from that truth so that we can manifest this in reality. So I'm very honored and I'm very privileged to welcome everyone and join all of you today in receiving this wisdom and this medicine from our panelists. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rolf. I would also like to invite the director of the Warrior Cross Cultural Center to say a few words about the MSI program. Carolina Alfaro, are you with us?
Here. Good evening, everyone. On behalf of the Warrior Cross Cultural Center, it is such an honor to share space with everyone this evening. The Warrior Cross Cultural Center is home to the Male Success Initiative, which was born during the pandemic. And the Male Success Initiative is very unique in the sense that we are home, or it lives under the Cross Cultural Center. So with that said, it really has this way of fostering the student growth, not just by the academic success, but where we nurture the spaces for our men of color, and for just all males who self-identify as a male, and really be purposeful and vulnerable in spaces where they can live in their authentic truths and be empowered to be the next agents of change. But where it's truly just transformative for them is when they get together to build community, to be in meaningful dialogues, and to advocate for ways to dismantle the toxic heteronormative traits that live within them. And that core of our work really revolves around reconstructing and healing from those negative ideologies by promoting self-reflection, critical thinking, and lots of empathy. This event in particular is just so extremely important to us, and it's a core value for our center to really think about ways in which we dismantle things. And as on a personal note, you know, I'm a mother, I identify as a Chicana mom to a young Chicanito of 17 years old, being raised here in the Central Valley. So these types of events are extremely important for me to learn best ways and tools and practices that can help me break those cycles of toxic behaviors and masculinity in our own familia, helping him understand how he is generationally born into this machista culture from his abuelos, his tíos, his padrinos, and all just the ancestors around us. And together, you know, we as a family try to look for ways to really think about collectively healing from that. And so tonight, again, it's just such an honor to share space. And on behalf of the Warrior Cross Cultural Center, thank you all for being part of this important and critical dialogue.
Thank you, Carolina. So now we're going to turn it to Dr. Escamilla for an opening blessing. You're muted, Dr. Escamilla.
Okay, yeah. Kiako, buenas tardes. Y good afternoon to everyone. I can't see all of you at once. I only have some people across the screen here. But I have some copal burning here with some tobacco and some sage to clear the air. Clear the air, and I've noticed that the more that I burn this, and the more that I do this, and the more that I practice this, it becomes like automatic. The copal automatically puts me in a different frame of mind, and then that's how things get done. We do things over and over and over and over and over, and then it just, we could just very quickly slip into a different frame of mind, which is what I think we want to do here. Is I remember we were asked one time, myself and Don Marcelino Robles, I'll mention his name as an indigenous elder that really transformed not just me, but our family and the home, the place that I have here, where I wish you could see it with all the trees and everything growing, He came here and he said he dreamt my grandfather, and my grandfather told him that I had forgotten how to plant. So he helped me learn how to plant. And I knew him for 15 years. One time we were invited to Stockton to do a blessing because the agency had bought a property and they wanted to plant there. And they asked Don Marcelino to bless the seeds. And Don Marcelino said, no, las semillas ya son benditas, ya son sagradas. Our life is blessed. Our life is blessed. So I'll lead you in some words to give thanks for that life, to give thanks. Y le saludamos al fuego, al abuelito fuego. We say good afternoon to grandfather fire, grandfather. It has two names in the Wixárika language. It's grandmother, grandfather, abuelito, abuelita. Gracias. Thank you for being here with us this afternoon, for your light, for your warmth. Sometimes we forget in this modern day that that's where all energy comes from that light, that warmth. We turn on light switches, we turn on lamps, and we forget that it ultimately comes from fire. It all comes from the fire. And so we thank you for being here with us, and ask you that you show us, that you teach us how to be the way that you are, connected to everything, ever giving, ever connecting, ever giving, ever connecting. Gracias, abuelito, por estar aquí con nosotros. Thank you, abuelito. Y le damos gracias también al sol, que ya mero se mete. Ya se está aquí en Caliente. It's almost, the sun is almost, it's descending. It's almost, we're going to lose it over here on the Western Hemisphere. But we give thanks to the sun, because, the sun, it climbs and it walks all day long, and it shines on everybody. Everybody, you shine on everybody, son. Parejo, equally, on everybody, sin medida, without measure, incansable. It doesn't get tired. And we ask the sun that we be like the sun. Because we have the sun here in our heart that beats day and night and beats day and night, and beats day and night, beats day and night. The sun, like the sun, like the sun, our heart. And we ask the sun, we thank the sun for giving us that energy, that spark, that life, and that we can continue also to share that spark with all our relations, all the people that are around us, that we share as men and women, as everybody, we share that spark of life with everybody. Gracias al sol, gracias al sol. And to the west over there behind me is the water, is the ocean, is the rainfall that comes down and it cleanses everything. It cleans everything. The water is like our blood that circulates through our body and cleans everything. Es la sangre, es la luna. The water, the west, it's the moon. And this afternoon in particular, it's a new moon. And so we thank you for your renewed energy. And you're also going to show us this afternoon, Madre, nos vas a enseñar que you're always up there. We think about the sun and we forget that the moon is always up there with the sun. They're always walking together. But we lose sometimes sight of the moon because of the power, the light of the sun. And we see the moon, especially at night when it reflects, when it teaches us that we can reflect and we can respect people, that we can see people for who they truly are with a little reflection, a little quiet, a little solitude, a little darkness. So gracias, Madre. Gracias. Esta tarde at 5:30 this afternoon, don't forget when our mother reminds us, she steps in front of the sun for a little while and reminds us that she's there also. So gracias a nuestra madre, gracias a nuestra madre. Y le damos gracias también. Over here to my left are the grandfathers, the ancestors, the air, the wind, the air that takes these words that I'm speaking and takes them to your ears magically somehow. And the words that you speak come to my ears and they touch my heart. Yeah, see, and that's how we touch each other. It's the wind que porta las palabras, it carries those words to each other so we can hear each other, we can understand. And we listen to the ancestors and their drums and their sonajas, their rattles, and their cantos, their songs they left with us that opened the road. The ancestors opened the road for us. Sometimes we forget that we're here because they opened the road for us, and we're grateful to those ancestors. We're grateful to the wind. We're grateful to the air that lifts us up. Gracias. Le damos gracias también al aire, al viento. Y también no nos olvidamos de nuestra madre. To the south, underneath our feet, we walk on her all the time. We're walking on our mother. We're walking on her. And sometimes we forget she's the one that feeds us. Todo lo que comemos, everything that we eat comes from the earth, from our mother. And she's the one that teaches us and she shows us how to take that light from the sun and how to transform it into energy. She does that. She's the one that taught us how to do that. Esta nuestra madre, la que nos enseña. And our mother shows us about our descendants, all those children that we don't even know yet, all those little seeds that we carry with us and we pass along that we'll never meet. We may never know them in this life, pero ellos siguen. And that's who we really, really want to thank, those descendants that are going to carry forth our work, the work that we do, and carry it forth into the future. And we pray for them. For them, we pray. We pray for the children that they can carry these good seeds and take care of this earth the way that our ancestors taught us how to do, how to take care of this earth and how to plant and how to nurture and how to eat right and how to walk right, and how to talk right. So muchas gracias también le damos a nuestra madre. We give thanks to our mother. Thank you, mother. Ya con eso te paso la palabra. Wow.
Gracias, Dr. Escamilla. All right, so let's begin our panel. So I want to start off by introducing Dr. Long T. Bowie. Is an associate professor of global and international studies at the University of California, Irvine. His scholarly interests include refugee community memory, higher education, race, gender, sexuality in the media, queer masculinities, and the history of technology. He is the author of Returns of War, South Vietnam and Price of Refugee Memory, and Model Machines, a history of the Asian as automat. I always mess up this word. Automat. I can't believe I'm messing it up. Anyways, my nervousness. We also have Roger Lee. Roger was born and raised in Los Angeles, California throughout the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and experienced extreme trauma while growing up and suffered from PTSD and addiction for the majority of the early part of his life. Roger transformed his life with the help of therapy and is now an experienced, independently licensed clinician with over 10 years of experience. Hector Villegas, Hector is a first-generation Chicano from Barrio Logan in San Diego, California. He faced adversity and hardship in his adolescence and survived gang and prison life as a young man. Ultimately, he dedicated himself to the visual and performing arts, education, community organizing, activism, and fatherhood. Hector is a proud father of, I hope I say this, Pitani, Quetzal, and Yolotzli Itzilac. And finally, we have Roberto Rodriguez, or Dr. Seeley. He is retired as an associate professor in the Mexican American Studies Department at the University of Arizona. He is a longtime award-winning journalist, columnist who returned to school in 2003 in pursuit of a master's degree and a PhD in mass communications at the University of Wisconsin at Madison. Some of his books include Justice, A Question of Race, Our Sacred Maize is Our Mother, Indigeneity and Belonging in the Americas, Yolki, A Warrior Summoned from the Spirit World, Testimonios on Violence, and Writing 50 Years Amongst the Gringos, Más o Menos. So welcome. So I want to begin with, so we have two questions for our panelists. These are the questions that I'm going to be asking them. I'm going to put them in the chat so you can have them which one, you can see what I'm going to ask them. So I want to start off with Dr. Bowie. What challenges did you experience in your life that led you to a transformative path? And the second question is, how do you incorporate healing into your personal and or professional life?
Okay, thank you so much for all that welcome. Thank you everyone for inviting me here. I got 10 minutes, so I'm going really fast. Vietnamese people are known for talking really fast. So I'm speaking to you from Houston, Texas, where I was growing up my whole life. My sister's getting married to a Salvadorian guy. And my whole family, the women never married other Vietnamese men or Asian men because they felt the Vietnamese men were toxic. And maybe the war messed us up, or I don't know the traumas of war, but I'm a child of refugees. And I learned a lot of bad things. A lot of good things about resilience, but a lot of traumatic stuff. For instance, growing up, I went to 15 different schools, 4 high schools, 5 elementary schools, 4 junior high schools. I moved around a lot because we were poor, we couldn't afford the rent, and it was really rough. But both my parents were not great. They both left me. My dad left us first, but I don't have any love for him because growing up, he sexually molested me. So I have problems with touching people because of that whole experience with him. And then my mom, she just left us. She became a single mother, but then she didn't want to be a mother. She was a teenage mother. And so by the time I got to college, she had spent months, in a year, I'm the oldest of 4. I'm taking care of my siblings for months, but she disappears and come back for Christmas. And I had to figure out how to register them for school and all this stuff. By college, she just left us. So I was their guardian in college. So when I hear college students, they talk about the struggle, and I ask them one thing. I like, do you have one parent, one good adult that takes care of you? And they all say yes. I'm like, then you're good, because that love will take you far. So I don't care what you're going through, because I didn't have any adults taking care of me, and we could have been thrown in the foster care system if I didn't become the guardian of my own siblings in college. So I didn't make any friends in college. It was a rough time. But throughout my life, I had a rough. So I went to the military, hoping that there's a violence in me that feeling that must be from the war. I was like, I want to join the military and give me GI Bill for education, but I also could be there's rage and violence with guns. This is where all these mass shootings, when many of them are former veterans, are coming. But so I'm a veteran, and I'm proud of that. And so when I got to my degree, I said, I'm gonna choose ethnic studies. I want to know why our communities of color suffer so much, especially Southeast Asian communities, because we tend to be lumped with the rich, crazy rich Asians. And I hate when they lumped Cambodians, Vietnamese, Filipinos with Koreans and Chinese. I don't like that. So we're just very different. And then so I went to ethnic studies, hoping to learn about race and justice, community empowerment. And that's where I met Dr. Caporal. So he's basically my homie from then. And, growing up, I didn't know, they lumped me with Asian American studies. That's what I had to do because that's my body. But growing up, I was the only Asian in my entire school and my entire neighborhood. So I grew up with mostly Black, brown men, and I was bullied for it because when you're the only Asian kid, they're going to target you. So I learned how to fight for myself, but I didn't have any friends growing up. I had a very lonely, depressive childhood where I thought about suicide very much. And so growing up, the only Asian person in your own school and people just targeting you all the time, it just really sucks. But I always felt hard that I'm like a man of color, And like all my friends say, you're like an honorary like you're an honorary like Chicano, but I'm from like Tejano or something like that. And so over time, it's like, how do I heal myself? Because there's so much trauma. And I'm just giving you a little tidbit of my crazy life. I have a lot more craziness in my life that I can't even cover in 10 minutes. But then I started to pick up tarot, astrology, palmistry, numerology, face reading, mole reading, all this stuff I picked up because I felt traditional religions can be a little bit patriarchal. Maybe not everyone who's part of the religion, but the way it looks, it could be a little bit homophobic. That's why I left the military during the don't ask, don't tell policies. At the time, they excluded queer people. So and I disagree with that policy, so I left. And so I picked it up because I felt that these what people call the occult is where women and weird people and people don't fit in, and LGBT, and also all types of different non-normative people actually can find their healing when no one's going to judge them, where there's no rules and dogma and sins and hell and none of that stuff. So for me, I was like, we don't have any of that. We just want to know why things are. And over time, I developed this. For instance, I've done over 1,000 tarot readings. In fact, I've done many tarot readings for Dr. Escamilla for many times for him. And so it's very powerful. I can tell when something's going through. I had a friend recently. She said, I got something going on in my life. I don't know what it is. I said, what is it? She's like, I can't tell you. I can't tell you. It's too traumatic. I looked at the cards. I was like, you were molested by an uncle. And she was like, oh my gosh. And she has a therapist that she's gone for like 10 years. She's like, I can't even tell my therapist. And you pulled it out of me. So I recognize that there's a story, and I'm never wrong about these tarot readings. I can tell you got the job or not. And it's shocking to know that the story is outside of you. You internalize the story, but let's say you break up someone, you thought they left you, and I pulled the cards like, that person got a new job when they first met you. The person like, yeah, that's true. I thought they didn't have time for me, but you're right. And then I recognize that. So like our story is a collective story. There is a destiny that we all have to meet. We have a lot of human action and agency, but there is a weird type of like destiny where, like, for instance, I read my birth chart, my natal chart, and it says that both my parents will leave me in my life. I won't have them in my life, and I would be sexually abused by my father. It was shocking when I read this birth chart for myself. So all these things are supposed to happen to me, were supposed to happen to me, and so it was shocking. And I was like, well, what's the purpose of all this trauma? Well, it turns out I'm supposed to be a healer. Dr. Escamilla, I go to his house very often, and Don Marcelino is a shaman from Mexico, indigenous, doesn't speak Spanish. And every time he comes, there's hundreds of people that line up to go to the house to basically get La Limpia. And I stood in line just with all my friends one time, and then he did for each person, including all my friends, and he got to me, and he turned to a translator. He told the translator's like, you shouldn't be here. You are like a healer, like him. So he took me out of the line and basically said, you don't need to be healed. You're like the sun. And so I was shocked because all these people came to be healed by him, but I am a healer. And I've healed many people where they have something stuck in their throat chakra and they can't pull it out, and I pull it right out of them. It could be anything. I love talking to people who feel like they have no one else to talk to and they don't know how to articulate it. But I'm very good at that because part of my job as a professor, and I communicate all the time. So when I talk about trauma, when I talk about healing, they go hand in hand, and we can't forget the reasons why we do these things. And I do it because every time I heal someone, I feel like I heal myself. And I think I started at 5:32, 5:23. I forget what. Is it 10 minutes? I'm good. I always respect people's time. I don't want to take other people's time. So thank you all, and I'll pass on to the next person.
Thank you, Dr. Bowie. Okay, so now we're gonna go at Roger Lee. The questions are, what challenges did you experience in your life that led you to a transformative path? And how do you incorporate healing into your personal and or professional life?
Well, I was enjoying what you were saying, Dr. Bowie. I wasn't thinking about the time. I will try to be just as gracious, but it's a lot getting from South Central to here. And so I will try to do my best. So one, the challenges, part of the challenges and experience of my life began before I knew who I was. You know, you roughly are familiar with your name at around 5 years old. And I was raised by, in the hood, what you would call a quadruple OG. My father was the original baby bro of Los Angeles with the Snyder Boys, very well respected gangster. His whole side of the family are gangsters, killers, pimps, drug dealers. And he changed his life for my mom. They were school sweethearts. So I say that to say there is a great influence of what we call in the hood is just a way of being that is normalized, but it's really just, a passed down, somewhat hyperarousal state of a response to growing up in a very dangerous environment, both socially and physically. And so that's what I was born into. The 70s were the last of the golden years of LA. Around 1978, 79 was the first time I experienced sudden death. My brother was murdered when I was about 4 years old. Didn't quite understand it. Somewhat remember him, but I do remember vividly him in the casket and knowing that he was stabbed to death. At about 10 years old, my friend Timothy, who was about 12 or 13, was abducted from the field, raped, stabbed, murdered, cut up, and left in the fields that we used to ride our bikes in. And that, as much of a shock as it was to us, because LA was such a golden city at that time, we chalked it up to, as kids, we were scared, of course, and the nightmares are normalized, but we chalked it up as just, a psychopath finding our friend. By 14 years old, that had changed because drive-bys, it's so funny watching the world today in America, because drive-by started just like you hear about mass shootings. Like you start hearing on the news about drive-bys and they're over here and they're over here, and before you know it, they're right at your front door. And so at 14 years old, I lost my first friend, 14 going on 15. His name was Tambora Hines. His parents got fixed up a Celica Supra. And that was the car back in the day because he was a straight A student from kindergarten to high school. And he took his car out on Crenshaw, which was a cruise boulevard. The first weekend he had it. This is before Crenshaw had the reputation of being as dangerous as it was. It was a place where high school students cruise just like grown men cruise. And so at 16 years old, somebody comes up to the car with a shotgun, tells him to get out. He tries to move the car. They shoot him in the chest. And that was the beginning of life changing for me and my neighborhood, because that was the beginning of watching schoolboys that I went to elementary school with turn into gangsters. And one by one, I lost friend after friend, up until my across the street neighbor, who was a gang member and got out and got a job with Caltrans, and 6 months later he was dead. And that his car ends up being my first high school car in high school. And so initially, of course, we don't know, we're traumatized. We just fall into a natural response of you can't show fear, but you got to do something with the pain. And that's how I found drugs and alcohol. Wasn't going to be a gangster, even though I wanted to ride with, some of my friends, but my dad was a gangster, so that was out, or used to be, so that was out. But so well respected, my friends protected me because they knew I was very good at school. The bigger part of the response to trauma that even led to more of some of the behaviors that you see today, as well as the music you see today. One of the main reasons NWA came out was because of the secondary response to trauma. So Tambora Hines was the best of us, a straight A student. And what his death hurt. After his death, me and our friends are talking about what we're going to tell the news, what we're going to tell people about Tam, waiting for the news to come around. Day 1 passed, day 2 passed, day 3 passed. No news, no reports, no big deal. As a matter of fact, a couple days later, a little blurb in the back of the LA Times comes out, unidentified black teenager killed on Crenshaw. That's all people knew about Tam. And what people don't know is the commercialized version of, gangsta hardcore hip hop music that you see today was actually started less than 5 minutes away from my house in Compton in NWA. And what they were trying to do was let the world know what the news wouldn't report. And that is what was actually going on in Los Angeles. And so I fell into alcohol and drugs, almost OD'd on alcohol. I didn't even know you could OD on alcohol, but I almost OD'd on alcohol in my senior year of high school. Got in a church, preached for a little bit, and not to offend anyone, but me and the church end up with some fundamental differences. I love them. And so after church, my part of the traumatic response is you're so happy to be alive at 18 and 19 years old, you're not really thinking about consequences of your decisions. Hence, the health issues that we have today at our age, because we never thought about our diet and the decision making. So I got my girlfriend pregnant in college. We got married at 18, had our first kid at 19, and 3 kids by 22, 23 years old. This led to the justification of my life of crime because not only was I hurting inside, I didn't really want to have the patience to execute the education that I had because of this unaddressed pain. So I started drug dealing and robbing people, what we call hitting licks, growing up. That led for a few years, and of course, eventually a burnout, until my dad, told me, hey, I sacrificed my whole life for you not to do this. And here you are running head first into a life that I walked away from, which was kind of a wake up call. And so even though I stopped doing what I was doing, I still didn't embrace the educational abilities and gifts that I had. And I just started working in a warehouse. And as time went on, I went from the warehouse to become a store manager. And in being a store manager for over 15 years, I got tired of it around my late 30s. And I decided to go back to school. I thought I was going to go back for business. 3 months into school, I realized business was something that I was good at, because I was an ex-drug dealer, but I hated it. And so I went to talk to my counselor. My counselor said, hey, well, what has kept you into store management for so long? And I said, the people. I love people. I love talking to people, trying to help somebody leave their life at the door and give their best at work. And she said, well, hey, go into, sounds like human services. I said, okay, I want to go into human services. And she says, well, let's do business with a focus in human services. And then in that curriculum, I took a case management class and before I walked into that class, I never once thought of being a psychotherapist. By the end of that class, I had committed to the master's program, went right into the master's program. And as part of the master's program, you have to do therapy. And so I sit down in front of a therapist, and within 30 to 45 minutes, I discover I had PTSD. And I found out what PTSD was. I had heard about it before, but a term only reserved for soldiers. And my therapist broke it down how it was interwoven not only in my life, but in my culture, as well as things passed down to me that I thought was normal behavior. And that was the beginning of redefinition. I hated life at one point. I was suicidal. I was homicidal. I hated life. I hated God. I hated people. because I thought it was unfair in the 80s. Some of you may be too young to know, but there is a show called 90210. Well, I used to have to watch this show on TV. And 90210, if you guys don't know, is Beverly Hills. This show incensed me as a teenager because Beverly Hills is only 30 minutes away from my mother's house. So I get to watch these kids like living it up in BMWs, and I'm fighting for my life. So I hated life and I thought it was so unfair. 6 months after starting therapy, I was after becoming a therapist, working in the agencies, trying to get my LAC up for my independent license, was very nervous. I even thought about quitting. Part of the PTSD response is that not having confidence in yourself, and I didn't, I had none. I was going through the motions, but I was about to quit. And I go to my supervisor and I go, I got something to tell you. My supervisor goes, I got something to tell you too. And I go, okay, well, you go first because I'm ready to quit. And my supervisor goes, what are you doing in therapy? And I'm like, oh boy, here it goes. And I go, what do you mean? And he goes, all these families are asking about you. And I go, what do you mean? He goes, their kids want to only work with you. And I go, why? And he goes, you're the only person they say they identify with. And it wasn't until that moment that I realized that was the reason why I went through everything I went through in Los Angeles. And how I incorporate this healing today is I continue the redefinition of myself through meditation and prayer, as well as I challenge the source of my thoughts. It's a technique that I picked up in Taoism, whereas the principle is there's no good or bad, but there's just being. And there's a philosophy in Taoism in that the thoughts and things that you get, to take time to turn to the source to find out exactly where they're coming from. And so that's how I continually incorporate in my healing today. I am continually redefining myself by challenging my thoughts, as well as addressing the physiological aspects of the triggers that I still have from PTSD by regulation, meditation, and prayer. I hope I'm on time. Felt like a lot.
Thank you, Roger. Thank you for sharing. So next, we're going to move with Hector. Hector, what challenges did you experience in your life that led you to a transformative path? And how do you incorporate healing into your personal and or professional life?
Can everybody hear me? Yes? Okay, cool. First of all, I just wanted to ask permission to everyone here and to my elders, my ancestors. Just want to give thanks for opportunity to share. And to Juvenal, which I've known for many, many years, we can do a whole one of these panels just on his life. Good stuff here in the neighborhood. So what challenges? Well, growing up, our parents, I'm first generation Chicano here in the US. My dad was here, my mom was here. They were together for quite a while. When I was around 5 years old, my dad decided to leave, and we were raised by my mom, barely speaking any English. Very strong woman that I'm grateful for, that she's still alive today. So yeah, being raised, in a low-income household with 3 sisters and a brother, and I'm the youngest one. And my sisters and my brothers are trying to acclimate to life here in the US as well. So, we were all trying to learn, and we were all trying to figure things out at the same time. And I was supposed to be learning from them, but it was interesting. I'm the only one that's born here in the US from my whole family. So I guess you can say I'm lucky in a way that I don't have to deal with all the stuff that my sisters or my brother and a lot of my other, gente have to deal with being here on this side of the border. But I wrote a few things down, here and there. But just like want to thank Dr. Bowie and Dr. Lee for Mr. Lee for sharing here, and I'm just really thankful for to be able to listen to what you had to say, and I resonated with a lot of the things that were shared. So it was really good. But you know, just growing up in the barrio was organic for me as well. You know, it was something normal. It was not anything that I was trying to be. And growing up here in San Diego and Barrio Logan, you know, it was a big gang community, but also there was this other side of the community that I didn't know. It was just normal for me to be hanging out with the people that lived around me and the people I went to school with. But as a kid, you know, I didn't really get that much into school. I didn't really like school that much. I used to act up, not knowing that I was missing my father and needed his help, you know, growing up. And so I was acting up in school. So back in the day, you would get paddled. So I got paddled by my vice principal, and so those kinds of things, those kinds of traumas helped me, or not help me, but kind of push me in another direction and not, you know, like school that much. You know, it was not easy to go to school sometimes. So I just focused on the streets and, you know, got in trouble. I've been to, you know, juvenile halls or the prisons, and I never really had a childhood. I had to grow up pretty fast and to be able to survive in the barrio. And you know what, growing up, I always had people like trying to encourage me to go to school, to be good, to go home early, to not to get involved in certain things. But you just you find your own way, and that's what kind of happened. You know, I had to struggle through all that type of stuff. Just like was mentioned, you know, there was a lot of things that I seen here in the community that was kind of like normal. It wasn't a big deal, but there was an impact there. There was something happening. And so when you normalize those type of things of seeing people dead or shot or bodies or be, you know, I didn't get scared. It was something that I didn't get scared of, but it was something that I had to watch out for, you know. So those were some of the challenges that I went through. And then just, you know, a lot of the times when people are in gangs and stuff like that, and then you go to prison, it becomes something else. It's a whole nother ball game. You have to get involved in stuff whether you like it or not. You know, so there was, you know, those challenges of trying to make it through prisons, trying to make it through those rough times. And, you know, it was, I like my friends growing up, homies growing up in the neighborhood, they all had families. They all would change. Things would happen like, oh, you know, I have a baby, I'm gonna change, I'm gonna do right, I'm gonna try to do something better. But for me, I didn't have children at a young age. I had children a little bit older, so you can say I was like a late bloomer. So it was just me, you know. My sisters and my brother and stuff, they would kind of worry about me, but I was just kind of like out on my own. So, you know, just maneuvering the streets and then, you know, getting more involved in the drugs and use of drugs and selling them. I'm not gonna lie, it was a real fun time in my life. I had a real good time. But you know, the times that you go into prison and you go into jail, you start feeling like, man, this is where I'm gonna end up at if I keep on doing this, right? You have that realization, but there was people there that were never gonna get out. And so I was like, you know, there was that moment when I just broke down. I just, you know, I was in the cell. I had already been in the hole for 7 months, and I had 3 more months to go. Actually 2 more months to go. But at that time, I had like, you know, I didn't know what it was. I started sweating. I started feeling nervous. And where do I go? I'm in a room. I can't go nowhere. I can't holler for help. I can't, there's nothing, you know, it was one of the worst feelings that I ever had in my life. And I realized at that point that there was a community out there. There was a family, you know, a lot of people that loved me, that wanted to support me, but I kept on making these wrong decisions, you know. And when at that moment I cried, you know, it was a real difficult moment for me because I was helpless. I couldn't do anything. You know, when you're in isolation like that for many months on end, and some people being in those isolations for years, you know, I had hope for myself. There was something that I did have. So, you know, going on to how do I incorporate healing, or, you know, what's happened, or the transition, or how that worked, is when I got out that one time many years back, I told myself that there was a lot of value that I still had, that wasn't supposed to be my future. I could do other things, you know, and you know, and it did. Things just started working out for me. I just started going back and getting involved with the community. You know, started going back and learning from my traditional ways that were always there. You know, the ceremonies. And that's when the healing began for me, is with the traditional ceremonies, and learning that I had, like I said, a lot of value. I had a culture, I had a tradition, I had a way of life that I wasn't utilizing, that I wasn't having, that I wasn't making a part of my life. The drugs and the craziness was overpowering that. But I learned to get back to get back to my roots with my community. And that's why I'm lucky, is that I have a real strong traditional community here in San Diego. This Saturday is going to be Chicano Park Day, the 53rd celebration, commemoration of Chicano Park. And so, you know, have a whole community of elders, of traditions, ceremonies, a lot of outlets, a lot of places where I can go and get that help. And you know, I'm one of the things that helped me today is to just stay involved and give back. I'm giving back in a lot of different ways to the community. Just recently, we had a Barrio Logan Science and Art Expo, and you know, my compadre Beto Vasquez, Dr. Beto Vasquez, he and I decided with him with the science background and me with my art background, decided to do this for the community. And so, you know, so on and so forth, is just staying involved and giving back. There's a lot of things that need to be done still, you know, and there's a lot of good things that are out there that, but I'm lucky to have crossed paths with young men like I'm not sharing a lot because we don't have a lot of time to share here, but you know, there's a lot of work that has gotten done. And Juvenal, I crossed paths with him, Dr. Juvenal Caporal, many years ago when he was having a hard time in his life, and I was able to be part of his life. Then I worked in the schools, I worked in the elementaries, in the middle schools, and in the high schools. And just like it was shared earlier, is I was able to identify with the kids like Roger Lee, and I was able to connect. And a lot of people thought we were doing magic or something, you know, like we were trying to, but it was just something very simple, you know, very beautiful, heart to heart, you know. And but that's kind of that propelled me to not have that feeling ever again, to be in that cell and to feel like that, like hopeless. And, you know, so I'm grateful for all the past that I've crossed with, and, you know, still continue healing with ceremonies and with the medicine, like Dr. Beto shared, with these plants, with this knowledge. And, you know, one thing that I always share is art is medicine for the heart, the mind, and the spirit. And that's what I'm focusing is in the art. Muralist, art teacher, and trying to, you know, get the kids to try to connect with them in that way.
Thank you, Hector. And your beautiful art, it's in the background, and I just want to share that one of my publications just got published in the Journal of Aztlan, and part of this, a lot of it was Hector's story. So yes. So last but not least, Dr. Sintley, if you can please share with us, what challenges did you experience in your life that led you to a transformative path? And how do you incorporate healing into your personal and or professional life? Dr. Sintley, can you unmute yourself, please?
Okay, I thought that was done automatically. Yeah, well, thank you, Juvenal, or Dr. Caporale. But I want to thank everybody first. You know, I related to pretty much everyone, especially the one from Compton. That story is almost the same, except from the east side. But of course, different. I like everybody, you know, what can you do in 10 minutes but scratch? So I'll just scratch a little bit. I think for me, what was really shocking for me was at a very young age, and that was 5 years old when I crossed the border. It's, you know, I know a lot of people have that experience. So, and I don't know that we know those stories, but it's radical, you know, when you live in a place that loves you, that embraces who we are, and on, and then to come across the border, and then all of a sudden you're like worse than dirt, you know, or no, dirt's good actually, but you know, where they treat you less than human, if human at all. So that was, I think, for me, something that set me off on this course, you know, to witness my mom being humiliated, my parents, my family, myself, you know, and it wasn't white people or white people only. It was people who looked like me too. So I think that's the first thing. The second thing that, and again, these are just outlines. When Ruben Salazar was killed, he was killed right down the street from where I lived. I grew up on Whittier Boulevard in East LA. And that was pretty radical because I had seen the death of Kennedy, Martin Luther King, Robert Kennedy. You know, I don't think I knew Malcolm X, you know. I think I was a little young for that, but because the media didn't really show him like the president, right? But for me, when they killed Salazar, that was very radical. I think the idea, for me at least, because the movement was already happening at the time. And I remember my parents had warned me about being in the movement, you know, and they actually had me see him on television before he was killed. And they said, see this guy, they're gonna kill him. Because he was talking about the Chicano movement and Chicano power. So that pretty much radically influenced who I was. Let me see. I put down my notes on this. Okay, there we go. I think going to UCLA was probably something equal in a sense, because again, I'm not forgetting his name. I think it's Lee, Dr. Lee. Talked about Compton. East LA, you know, same thing. You know, we're maybe 45 minutes away from UCLA. And you would think we were in a different country, because I used to live in an alley in a shack. And when we went to UCLA on a tour, it was like next to Beverly Hills, Bel Air. I forget all those communities out there, you know, super rich communities. Yeah, Bel Air. Anyway, the starkness of it, you know. In other words, we lived like barely, you know, like subsistence. And you had these massive homes, you know, just huge. And I think maybe that's the concept of like a class consciousness, you know. Don't laugh, but I'm serious. That when I came back, I said I wanted to burn that place down, the whole West Side. Anyway, that was a tour. Now, something related to Salazar, but later, was that I myself was almost killed by sheriffs on Whittier. And if anybody been to LA recently or the East Side, there's a big arch. So it was right there where I was almost killed. And that was about 5 blocks from where Salazar was killed. And that I was only 24 at the time. So it's kind of like the other youngster talked about. No, not the youngster anymore, but about I didn't get a chance to be a kid practically. ever since then, it radically changed my life, ever since I was 24. And I don't think, just from that point on, it's always been nonstop. I was already part of the movement, but, when I was almost killed, I was charged with 8 felonies of trying to kill 4 police officers. So literally I had to fight for my life, stay out of prison, for 20 or more. And I think for me, I have never stopped fighting that, I wish I could have, because it's not pleasant. When my skull was fractured, I just found out this weekend that my nephew, was almost killed by police in El Paso 9 months ago. And his case is active. It's almost identical to my case, two generations removed. His face, I should have sent it to you. But yeah, before it was ugly. Regarding healing, I don't know that it was intentional, but I've been surrounded by healers my whole life, especially at that point. After that, I think people could see that, and I should say that because, maybe some of you, I know, Bernal, but one of the things that happened to me is that I fought, and it was a hard fight. And my lawyer and I, we won both police brutality trials, 79 and 86. And I think that's probably what made my case different, because so many of us, red, black, and brown, indigenous, black, and brown peoples, we've all lived that literally since 1492. And the only difference, I think, is that I won, I won both those cases, which is unheard of even to this day. The only people that win in court are dead, the families win, but not the person. Anyway, let me see. Yeah, so one of the things that happened, like I said, I've never stopped fighting it, so I continue to do that. And I'll get back to that real quick in a second, because I wanted to say that somebody that was traumatized and, PTSD, and then there's something called traumatic brain injury, which is the fracture of the skull. That was that I met a neurosurgeon, I forget what it is, it's a neuropsychologist, or anyway, he's a top dude, one of those dudes that does trauma, Vanderkopf or something like that. And I remember when my wife at the time, both of us, we spoke at this big conference, and I spoke about the work I was doing on Mais, And so the thing about Mais, I was so excited talking about it. And then after we finished, the Vanderkopf guy, he's up there and he says, that's how you heal trauma. And I was like, what? He says, see, you have to find something more important in your life than your trauma. And this idea about your work that you're doing about Mais and following the roots, your roots, that is what has healed you, I actually went for therapy and all that, but I want to skip that for a second, only because I think how I was told to do this research is, for me, it was awesome. We were looking for origins and migrations at the time. This is like probably 20-some years ago. And I remember one time, and it's happened several times, but this one specific time, this one elder says, are you looking for where you came from or where the Aztecs came from? Because we had found a little map that showed that the Aztecs lived in Utah. And after several years, I got asked that question. And I said, I don't know. Nobody's really asked me that. People assume, that I was looking for Aslan or something. And I said, but if you're asking me, I think the answer is I'm looking for where I came from. And he says, that's what I thought, and then he says, if you want to know who you are, forget the maps. You're not going to find who you are on a map. You want to know who you are, follow the maize and follow the corn. And so that's been my life ever since, and in one sense, you could say that that's probably what not only helped to heal me, but it brought me close to elders from different traditions, including and primarily my parents first, I think in the past, I didn't look at them as my elders. I just looked at them as my parents, until I realized that everything that I learned, they had already taught me since I was like 5, 6 years old. And in fact, I'll have to tell the story real brief, because I guess you could say I'm a storyteller too. But what happened is I asked my parents, like, why do they call us wetbacks? Wetbacks, or mojados. We only spoke in Spanish at the time. And my father said, don't worry about that, you know? He says, we didn't swim across an ocean to get here. When he told me that at 5, 6 years old, I knew exactly what he meant. So he wasn't talking about who I was, or rather, it wasn't so much about Europeans coming from Europe, but rather that we didn't come from anywhere. We were from there, you know? Didn't matter if there was a river there or not, you know? So anyway, and let me know, you can cut me off at any time. Let me see. Well, the other part about the healing is that to this day, the work that I do is about Indigenous, Black and Brown peoples and violence. You know, we get hit on every angle imaginable, and literally since 1492, whether it's police violence, mass incarceration, murdered and missing Indigenous women. What people don't know is that African-American women and migrant women face the same crises. You know, the numbers, I mean, it's all bad, you know, it's always been. And I used to think that they were different phenomena, you know, kind of like, oh, well, that's vigilante violence, that's different, you know. Till finally, after all these years, I figured it out that all that violence actually is very much related. And the number one reason is because of the judicial system. That is, you know, if you're seen as less than human, why investigate? You know, why? So that's the characteristic of murdered and missing Indigenous, African-American, and migrant women. They don't investigate. So how could there be a prosecution? With the violence, you know, police brutality, all that stuff, same thing. We're not seen as fully human. So you have internal investigations, therefore like 99.999% impunity. No prosecutions. And in the end, how could there be convictions? If there ever was a conviction, they get out. Oscar Grant, the killer, got, I think, 10 years, but in the end, he ended up doing 9 months, you know? Then that's, I guess, it's nothing unusual. That's actually the norm. So that's, let me see. So just the last two things real quick. One is general, one is personal. And that is that because of all this that I've been telling you, that's what surrounded me, helped me to surround myself with healers. You know, I've been part of 2 calpolis in my life. You know, the first one was when I lived in Albuquerque. I was part of Calpoli Iscali, and I was only there for about 5 years. When I moved to Arizona, I've been part of the same Calpoli for about 12 years, and that's Calpoli Teoxicali. You know, for me, you know, we all have different callings. You know, I never saw danza as part of me. To me, it was running, you know, and so to me, that's how I pray, with my feet. And that was a lot. You know, I did the temazcal, even though like when I got the head injury, the heat very much affects me a lot. But I learned to somehow get in there and try and breathe a little. But so that's how, for me, a lot of, you know, being part of that has connected me with people throughout. And then the last thing, as I was going to say about the personal, I still run to this day. I live in Teotihuacan in Mexico, by Mexico City. It's, I think, 8.5 kilometers around the pyramids, and I run that, and I bike it too. But I think the most important thing, it's not, I don't know that I intentionally did that, but apparently that's what I do now, is when people started dying from COVID, I would leave an ofrenda, an offering, you know, at the different temples, the moon, the sun, Quetzalcoatl, and there's a couple other ones, Quetzalpapalot, the palace. And depending on who the people are, like if they're creative and stuff, that's where they'll go, the Quetzalpapalot, you know. If it's women, it's the moon, you know, and on and on. And recently I found a nicho, you know, behind the platform where the sun sits. And that's kind of like what I do now. But now it's not COVID anymore, or it's not limited to COVID. My sister just died of COVID. We buried her this Monday. Now, what I was saying is, it's no longer COVID only, but when people die, it doesn't matter of what. They'll call me or write me and say, hey, can you leave an ofrenda for my tia or for my little brother or something, you know? So what I found myself now is I'm always there every day. It's like people are dying every day, you know? So in one sense, it's healing. One thing that, you know, like say right now, you see me choking, you know, choking up. I don't know if that's healthy or unhealthy, you know, because for me, I've been unable to cry since what happened to me in '79. And as much as I try, like I'll let a few tears roll down sometimes, you know, but rarely, you know. So I don't know if somebody might say I'm not healed, but then isn't it normal to cry? I kind of see it the opposite, you know, like I think I'm not healed because I can't cry, you know. So anyway, so I think maybe a lot of us have a lot of both, right? We both are healers and we also need healing. Anyway, I think that should be enough. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Cindy. So we are moving now to the next part for our pláticas or small groups discussion. Dr. Cindy, Dr. Bowie, Hector, and Roger will each have we're going to break off into breakout rooms, and they will all host one group. And then you could join whatever group you want to join, so that you could then ask more, you know, more detailed questions about what you experienced. And if you don't know what to ask, I'm going to guide some of you, right? Here are questions that you can answer. This is just to generate dialogue, right? But you are more than welcome to ask whatever you want to them. And again, these are just questions that you can ask. These are just reference questions, but you feel free to ask whatever you would like.
Yeah, if I'm supposed to be talking. I forgot. I don't know.
Good afternoon, Professor Caporale.
Yes, Flora. Hi.
Sorry, I have a question. I don't know which room I'll be joining.
You can choose whoever you would like to.
Oh, okay, because
ask, yeah.
I don't see like the link, so I'm like, how do I do it? Like,
Okay, Viv, help.
Which room would you like? I'll put you in there.
Thank you, Viv.
oh, I think number 4.
And then your first name? Sorry.
Flor?
Okay, let me.
Thank
Number
you.
4, right?
Flor
Yes.
Contreras.
Oh,
Gotcha.
yeah. Thank you.
No problem.
Hey, can you put us, this is Beto, can you, Yoli's here. Can you,
Yoli.
Hola, Juvenal. Dr. Juvenal.
Good to have you. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, I was really, really moved by all the stories. Even though I've heard Dr. Bowie's story, it still touches me a lot.
Join him. He will be having a group. So yes.
Can you put us
Viv,
there?
Yeah, I will.
Viv, thank you, Viv.
Okay.
Hi, this is Ileana. I would like to be, I believe it's number 1 with Dr. Bowie.
What was your name? Sorry.
Her name is Ileana Galas.
Gotcha. Number 1. Okay.
Hi, this is
Hi,
Maria.
Professor.
Sorry, I'm having issues joining a breakout room as well. I'd like to join number 4, please. My name is Cristina.
Christina. All right, number 4. You got it.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Same here for Maria Ramos.
Okay,
Number 4.
what room number will you like, Maria?
You know what? Put me in any room that has the least amount of people. Just randomly throw me in a room.
Gotcha.
Anyone would be good for me. Thank you.
Babe, you're the one behind the scenes. Make it happen, please.
Try my best.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yes, please. Me
What-
too.
What would you like?
Any room, I guess.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Dr. Chucho, I'll put you in, let's see. Put you in Rogers.
Anyone else? I'm also torn, babe. I don't know what room I should go to. I guess I'll probably be going from room to room.
Let's go room to room.
All right. Thank you, babe, for holding it down. I'll be back. I shall return. If you need me, please let me know.
Sounds good.
Birthday breaks down to 7. That number that I showed you before was actually my birthday. So, which is coming up next week. But you can see I'm intellectual. So if you're at 1, you're visionary, 2, peacemaker, 3, and I'll talk more about the master numbers 11. But as a 7, the thing about numerology is your life is the opposite of what you should be. In my life, I'm supposed to be spiritual and intellectual. But growing up dirt poor, all I could think about was money. What's mine? What can I make? And I'm petty. I'm like, this is my stuff, don't touch it. I'm so materialistic and I worry about needs. But the universe is like, this is where you start, but where the opposite is. So for instance, if you're a supporter, you're supposed to help everybody. Sometimes you can't even help yourself. You can't have your own family. Yolanda, I know her, I don't want to spill her anything, but as a 6, she has to take care of so much for herself and her family. She wants to take care of the community. And that's where her life pathway, where her purpose is. For instance, if you're an 8, you could be this boss person, but in your life, you feel like you're always subordinate. People always underestimating you, or you feel like you're not in a position of power, and then you're supposed to get power. So weirdly, numerology tells where we start is separate than where we end up. I'm supposed to be very spiritual, intellectual, and recognize that life is
All right, it seems like everyone is back. So we had 4 groups. Who would like to share some of the things that they learned, picked up from Dr. Bowie's room?
I'll go.
Thank you, Nina.
Yeah, for sure. I just really loved being in space with Dr. Bowie. It was really excellent to hear about his academic journey, and also the mentorship from another queer academic was really cool. I don't often get to have that, so I thought that was great. And we talked about numerology and tarot, and I thought, like, what a beautiful way to push back against the white dominant Christian hegemony. Like, they're just so cool and okay with sharing tarot and astrology and stuff in academic spaces, and that's a revolutionary idea to me, because I'm really into that stuff too, but I have it very separated, you know, so I'm very appreciative. It was a really good talk. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing, Nina. Anyone else want to share or elaborate from room number 1?
I can share.
Shy group.
Oh.
Thank you, Luis.
I found this session to be very eye-opening because some of the things he mentioned I kind of resonated with. So actually the complete opposite for me. He said he grew up around brown and Black people. I actually grew up around the Asian community back in the Bay Area. So I feel like an outcast when I'm around Hispanics and other Black and brown people. So it's taken a while for me to get used to that. And I think being at CSU San Ysidro has actually helped that, because it's very difficult when you're so used to seeing other people and like how you're treated. And yeah, what he said really resonated with me. So I appreciate what he said.
Thank you for sharing, Luis. Okay, so we're gonna go to room number 2. Who went to Roger's room? Anyone want to share?
I can start out by sharing. I was in Mr. Lee's room, and I really appreciated how we just really jumped right in to some very deep, very challenging, very real questions. And the conversation and everything that Mr. Lee shared it was really on point. And I can speak for myself to just say that, I mean, it's already helping me with the current challenge. And I anticipate, actually putting that medicine into practice moving forward. And got to learn that Mr. Lee has a podcast. I'm looking for it. I don't mean to put you on blast like prematurely, but Mr. Lee also has a podcast.
Thank you, Dr. Rowe. Anyone else want to share from Mr. Lee's room? Something you took away? You have a question, you have a further question, it could be anything.
I like how Mr. Lee talked about how even trained psychologists have emotional issues that impact them on a daily, and that I feel like he kind of gave credit to emotions, and that they're something that everyone deals with, and that we shouldn't kind of cast them aside.
Thank you, Melissa. And this is where, even putting this together, right? I couldn't stop but reminding myself that we're mind, body, emotions, spirit. And then the last one is the soul. And this is where the National Compadres Network teaches that that's where the soul is located. And it is the most important one, right? But these things cannot be separated from each other. Oftentimes we like to separate these things, but they're all connected. And so thank you for bringing that. Anyone else would like to share from Mr. Lee's room? All right, so now we're gonna go to Hector's room. Anyone want to share what you learned or what you took away from being in Hector's room?
Yeah, I'll chime in on this one if that's all right. The whole the challenge of trying to get through to people when you have a positive message to try to give, that the challenge behind it, like how like we have that bravado when it comes to what information we're willing to accept because what it may do to our image, things like that. So when you're conveying a message to somebody, like just having that patience and understanding that not everybody's gonna be like a sponge to super, absorb it, but sometimes it's not necessarily. Sometimes it's not necessary to pour that onto people. Sometimes people just need you to be there. When you were saying that, sometimes you can't. Sometimes people just aren't ready to hear the words.
Indeed, Pedro, that's correct. I was in this room and I just want to share a few things that I wrote it down because when you were talking, you made me, and you and Hector were talking, right? You made me realize that street gangs also do ceremonies. They have their own form of ceremony. In fact, that's what the whole jumping in process is all about, right? To get jumped into a gang is a ceremony, right? And so when we ask ourselves why people of color, in particular, men of color, young men of color, don't, leave school or don't feel like they belong in these spaces, well, part of it has to do with not belonging in these spaces, not feeling welcome. And even when I was putting this together, I couldn't stop but thinking, and you look at the numbers at CSU stand, and Carolina's very versed on this, by the way, right? About 70% of our campus is comprised of female students, right? And there's nothing wrong with that, but there's only about 30% males. Something's going on. And so then I started thinking, right? Like, even, and I'm just sharing out loud, right? As Viv was telling me, like, what songs do you want to have? What music do you want to have? Well, look at what's hot right now, right? And you look at the type of music that our young people are listening to, our kids, right? And the content, I don't have to share it, right? But I just want to highlight that there is something that's being glorified. Some things are being glorified and people want to belong or be part of that. So when positivity, then what happens is when you glorify negativity, the positivity is less attractive. People don't want to be part of that, right? And this is one of the reasons why it's imperative to have role models that help our community, that serve our community, and that look like you, because studies have shown that when people look like you, you identify with them, you connect with them, right? And this is what this whole thing is about, right? Again, the National Compadres Network reminds us that this connection, not only of ourselves, but of our community, is what causes sicknesses, is what causes imbalances. And so when you want to think about how it's all connected, one of the reasons why we have ceremonies is to reconnect, so that you can reconnect with your own being, because society does make us sick. I want to share, so the last group, and again, we'll open it up. We still have 8 minutes left, right? And who wants to share what was discussed in Dr. Seatley's room?
I can start by just saying that I really appreciated how Dr. Seatley reminded us how healing work and transformative justice kind of just go hand in hand, and how that healing can look so different depending on the experiences, and it can be expressed in such different and just different ways. And that our experiences are all just so unique. They shape the way that we are going to live through this journey. of healing. So I really just wanted to say thank you, because I think that there is just so much wisdom in this space, right? But when I'm surrounded by those reminders, it just really helps me kind of navigate my own life. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Carolina. Anyone else want to share?
Yeah, I just kind of to add on to what Carolina was saying, I really think that Dr. Rodriguez put it in a really beautiful way. He said healing doesn't substitute for justice. And as a psychology major myself, I know the importance of healing and the importance of just being okay in your mind for the victim. But I think it's also important for them to know that you don't have to forgive. You don't have to forgive immediately. Healing is for you. You do that at your pace, however you can, however you are able to do it, because every trauma, every level of trauma is completely different. So I think that was worded really nicely, and I just really, really can relate to his experience, and I'm just glad that he's finally living his best life.
Okay, I also would like to add, yes, I think finding a way how to heal, it's really important for everyone. And I really appreciate all the work you put, Dr. Juvenel, to put all these professionals be able to say some words to help us, help others. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Flor. Anyone else want to share? I want to say one thing real quick. And this is just my personal experience, right? Healing has to be intentional. What happens a lot of times is we try to busy ourselves with things. We run away from our problems. And sometimes we don't address them. And they don't go away by themselves. Time, while they say time heals all wounds, it has to be intentional, or it will get the best out of you. For the longest time, and this happened when I was writing my dissertation, I share this with my students, right? I thought I was cool. I thought I had found healing because I went to ceremonies and I learned all these things, right? And it wasn't until I interviewed 50 men, and Dr. Sini was part of my dissertation committee, that I realized how messed up I was. I realized that I was so focused on trying to get this education that I forgot about my own healing. And so it was the men, the concept of El Nakesh, other men, that I was able to see my own reflection. And that is what started this whole journey. This is what started this whole process. And this is the reason why I came to CSU STEM. And for me, healing will be a lifetime thing, because I think that my wounds are so deep that it's not going to happen just through one ceremony. It's going to be a lifetime commitment. But this is something that I chose to do, and that now is part of my life, and it's inseparable from my personal and my professional experiences. We have 3 minutes to open it up for any comments, questions, thoughts. Anybody want to share anything?
I just want to know if we can do healing circles again, because I got so much out of it and it's just so beautiful. So I hope this is a regular occurrence. And I also want to say thank you for making it so inclusive. It's all about masculinity and opened up with pronouns. And I just think it's beautiful. And it's so nice to be part of that space. Thank you.
Thank you, Nana.
I have a question. So we're talking a lot about like healing ourselves and stuff like that, but how do we even start healing the community, you know? Because we can go within and heal ourselves, but it's like when we feel inspired to like start to like heal our community, because we see all these things that are happening. So currently, so I live in Merced. Currently we had, the community lost a child due to bullying, and I was very affected by it. This child got beat up over at the Rock and Jump, and the media is saying that it was an accident and that it was a fight. There was no fight. The other kid was older, and the kid went into coma. Then he recently passed. So, you know, like, how do we start healing our communities?
I want to offer something along the lines of what Dr. Rodriguez had to say, and thank you, Dr. Rodriguez, for your sacrifices along the way that has paved the way to help for us. My answer to that is, we heal our communities by our response, by the way we respond to these things. Gandhi once said, one person doesn't have to make a difference, one person is a difference. And when you heal yourself and you address things in the community, you address it in a way to heal that as well. And our responses to these issues and our steadfastness in normalizing healing and transformative justice is what makes a change, and that becoming a new norm in the healing and transformative way you address that situation. Because we live in a society that conditions us for revenge and conditions us in non-healing ways to appease our emotions, to address issues that hurt us. But you don't answer hurt with hurt, you answer hurt with education. And that's what heals and transforms, and steadfastness in that transformative justice, as well as healing. And so a simple answer is our responses.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. For the sake of time, I wanted to ask Chucho if he could sing us a song.
Yeah, I'm here, Ruben. I'm sorry. I was trying to figure out this, trying to be a high-tech Aztec over here. and not keep it. Okay, hold on. Okay. Appreciate you. Yes, I could definitely share a song. I appreciate you all, and I'll be brief. I just want to express my gratitude to each and every one of you for all the words that you have shared based off of all the experience, the collective experiences. And I did want to share just one thing briefly before I share this song. Is it was making me think a lot about I heard my wife Maria talk about oftentimes in focusing in the forms that we have experienced trauma and how we've experienced trauma historically and intergenerationally, but also in the ways that we continue to hold and carry historically and intergenerationally medicine and how we are medicine. And I feel like every time someone shared, it was a reminder for me that, like, we're medicine. You know, you all are medicine. So I wanted to share this song that comes from our community for each and every one of you, and hoping that this vibration could bring a little bit of a little bit or a lot of bit of that healing that is necessary. Se concentla Juan Teochiwa, Plaza Tlanantzin, Ma Pisotis, Teochiwa, Nostin, Tawanyolto, Teo.
Thank you, Chucho. Beautiful song. And I just want to say this real quick. And Chucho is correct that though we carry pain, though we carry hurt, we also carry medicine. But it is imperative that you connect with it, that you connect with your sacred purpose so that you can bring that medicine out. On behalf of the Ethnic Studies Department and MSI at Saint State, we would like to thank you for making it to our event. Thank you and have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you,
everyone. Tlaxcamati, Tlaxcamati, Tlaxcamati.